Hi and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday the 1st of May. This is your host Nigel Creaser, and today we've got the second part of my interview with Peter Cappelli, the Professor of Management guy. So this week we are again supported by Tamplo. Tamplo is a online tool that turns meetings into actions and has a number of different features. The bit I'm going to talk about today is around the project and task management and the follow-up. Essentially, you have a clear dashboard that shows you an overview of scheduled tasks, alert for late tasks, an overview of team's progress. It saves you jumping into your Outlook and being diverted by that morass of email that we get. You can create your own daily plan in there, or you can, as a project manager, you may be assigning tasks to people, and those people can look at those, have their own daily plans, adding in their own specific items they've got to do, as well as the things allocated to them. For the project management point of view, you get a dedicated dashboard with a list of tasks, knowing what people are working on each project, and there's a load of collaboration capability in there, with the goal of getting no task left undone, more efficiency and motivation, and clear action plans. So if you want to see what this is all about, jump along to tinyurl.com/Nigel Creaser Tamplo. That's all one word, Nigel Creaser Tamplo. Have fun. So what's been going on in the past few weeks? So on a personal front, my dodgy knee that I've hurt recently is now on the mend, and nothing super serious, though a little bit painful. So I'm heading on to physio, which means that hopefully I'll be able to get back. Well, I can get back on a bike now, hoping to get back on my feet running soon. Probably be a couple of months yet when I say soon. So I've had to push back a few races that I was looking to do, but hopefully by the end of the year, I'm now targeting one of my favourite runs actually, which is the Lake Vyrnwy half marathon. Beautiful run. It was my first half marathon I ever did, and then I've had slower times at it every time since. So I've got some unfinished business there, and now it's back on. I'm hopefully going to target that and see how that goes. All preparation really for hopefully what will be next year for my main sort of charity that I'm interested in. Is Alzheimer's Research UK, which I ran the marathon for last year, and next year I'm hoping to run London if I can get a place with them and raise some money for that. So, well, hopefully everything will be fine and dandy to do that. So that's on that side of it. Work has been busy, work has been fine. Had some time off over Easter, which was lovely. Chilled out, managed to pick the week that wasn't as sunny as the second week, so there's a bit of irony there, but had some chilled out time with the family. Managed to get to beaches and wander around, coastal walks, kind of just wash the head clean of stuff, which was fab. And that washing the head clean and kind of mental health build up, I do notice that when I have stronger mental health, I am more creative by default, and more ideas and more things that get going, which I had never noticed before until I was ill last year, and then looked back over how I'd been for some time before that. And I had an interesting conversation on a couple of podcast interviews this recently about growth mindset, and that kind of opened up my head around the fact that you've got that when you are under stress, when you are not in your best place from a mental perspective, it's difficult to see and identify those opportunities, those positives, and where you're going to. And I think it's not a mindset that you have, it's a mindset that you are at the time. So it can be like a muscle. And that growth mindset, I think, looks for opportunities, looks for ways to do stuff, which has been something that I've found through my career. I've always been very good at looking at the positive. If we have a problem, I'm the one who can go, oh, right, well, we can work a way out, always do it. And I do know that I wasn't looking that way, I wasn't thinking that way during parts of the year before last. So it's quite a good eye-opener, that. And a reflection of that is that I have just launched a new listener group for you lovely people that listen to me, although I imagine some people who follow me on social media will probably join the group as well, and then hopefully they'll start listening. And twofold, really. A little bit of me being able to keep in touch with you guys, maybe have some dialogue with you guys, which would be fantastic, because sometimes it does feel like I'm just shouting into the internet. But on the flip side of that also is for you guys to connect. You all listen to me, and the fantastic guests that I'm lucky to get. You're all interested in this project management field, and therefore will have a level of knowledge yourselves. And I'm sure that in that group, should you wish to join it, you will be able to learn stuff and you will be able to help people. So hopefully we'll get a community there, and I'd like to try and get some discussion about the podcasts, about the topics in there, and maybe have a debate in there, and sort of longer term see if I can get some exclusive content, get some of the guests that are part of this in that group talking to you guys, whether that's video, whether that's text or whatever. So it's a little bit of an experiment, and the more I'm going to need a bow wave. I've got a couple of people in there, very good friends of mine, who've already joined. Welcome to them. There's an opportunity to introduce yourself, and it's called, as this is the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast, it is called The Dinner Table. So if you jump along to, you can use the tiny URL address, tinyurl.com/the dinner table, 2 N's in that, or just search for the dinner table in LinkedIn and you'll find a group there. Click to join. I did put on LinkedIn the other day to say I'll send out a code this weekend for people to get exclusive access. Unfortunately, LinkedIn isn't as sophisticated as Facebook with its group controls and things like that. So I can't even do that to give you an access code. So you just click to join, and then it tells me you've asked to join, and then I can let you in. That's brilliant on that side of it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes. As I say, it's a bit of an experiment. So let's see how it works. On the podcast front, I am awash with podcast guests at the moment. I have conducted a couple of interviews last week, and I have not last week, week before, and last week. So I've got 3 in the hopper already, ready to go. I've got about another 6 interviews scheduled over the next 4 weeks. So I think by the end of May, I will have had all of my sessions recorded. I may even start moving to a weekly at this rate, but I'm trying to resist that so I don't make a rod through my own back. But actually, in the group, let me know if you'd like to hear them weekly, if you'd like to hear them, is the fortnightly and the way I split them good, bad, indifferent to you? Just let me know. But yeah, I've got some fantastic guests, already interviewed some fantastic guests to interview. And what else is there? Final bit of news, really. I think I mentioned it before. I am speaking at the Greek National Project Management Conference, pmconference.gr. They've got a great lineup, and me, of speakers. I will be talking about productivity and project management at that event, and early on one in the morning on the 26th of May. So if you are interested, it's all online at the moment, so you can get it. They're all webcasts, so I'm just in the processes of finalising and rehearsing that, which is exciting. This is the first one of these that I've done. Yeah, and I'll probably use that presentation in another so another few other events if I can. I'm currently wrestling with Microsoft Sway because I decided I don't want to do PowerPoint. I want to use something so different, and I quite like Microsoft Sway. So learning as well as getting on with stuff. So that's it really. I'm going to shut up now. Quite a long recording of this intro, and let you have a listen to the second part with Peter Cappelli. And I hope you enjoy it, and I'll speak to you later.
It's one thing if everybody's remote, it's another if you are the remote person.
Yeah.
And everybody else is in the office. We remember how during conference calls, you had to be in China, so you're calling in for the conference call and everybody ignores you.
Yeah.
You could have been off the phone for a while, the line went dead, nobody knows, right? And it's important to remember that if you're going to be the remote worker, your career will pay a price for that, right? Now, people don't want to hear that, but there's been a bunch of studies of this. They all show the same thing. And ask yourself this mental exercise. Say, suppose I have an identical twin in my office. We're doing the same job, the same way. We're both equally good at it. But your twin is going to go back to the office and you're going to move to Himalaya and be a remote employee. Which one of you is going to get ahead? Well, yeah. I mean, we know. And what were you going to have to do to fix that? Well, there's nothing I can think of the way organizations work now, because it's so much about access to information, opportunities to shine, to grab the interesting projects early on, to know what's going on so you can adjust to the whims in the organization. We don't know how to fix that.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's just exacerbating another challenge that's always there, in that if you are a person in an organization that does a good job, does a fantastic job, gets on, do your work, but is someone who doesn't play the game, doesn't get involved with the not politically and nefariously, but don't self-promote, don't talk about what they've done, don't present what they've done as doing. They say, well, I'm just doing a good job. Whereas actually it is the scenario with the twin. If you've got one twin that says and talks to people about what they've been doing and is willing to promote something or go and talk at an event or something, or even organizationally, and the other one does the same level of quality of job and doesn't do that self-promotion, then that one that does starts to take the lead, doesn't it? And sometimes you're in that situation where you accept the fact that you're not going to, because you don't want that at the moment, you're not going to go forward. I think it's people have got to be conscious that if they're going to sit on the hill in Switzerland, they're going to have to work harder to be noticed. And that's not a criticism of the organization, because it's if someone's there and they've got a team of people, we're only human. The person that we see and know about what they're doing, we're going to notice that. The person who we who doesn't tell you about it and doesn't, and I'm in that situation whereas if I'm working from home, if I want to make sure people have seen what I've been doing, I've been in situations where I've been working away from my organization, embedded into another organization, and to be quite frank, I could have been sat down doing nothing for all they knew, but my organization was getting paid. I was where I was, the customer I was working for was happy with what I was doing, but there was difficulty in getting that, whether it was good, bad, indifferent message between, and that was me going into an office with a client.
So there's some really interesting ethnographies, studying some of these people working remotely, and exactly the problem that you're pointing out, and that is, how do I demonstrate to my bosses that I really am all in on this project? And they find themselves doing really nutty things. For example, like scheduling meetings at a time during their kids' birthday parties, so that everybody knows that they're kind of so into this project that they're willing to chomp on their family life in order to get it done, right? And scheduling meetings and things in the evening so that you look like you're super dedicated, because they don't have the opportunities to do that face to face the way we typically do. So it is true that people who are more outgoing and more self-promoting will always do better. What's interesting in this context here is that whether you are or not, you will be in worse shape if you are remote, because it's just so much harder to do the things that are typical in an organization, to just let people know you're around, and your colleagues will be around. It's one thing if we're all remote, not a problem, or at least not as much of a problem. But if everybody else is in the office and you're not, this is not going to work for you. And if you want to be an individual contributor, possibly that's worth it. Possibly your career might be fine with that. If you want to be a manager, not going to be fine, because so much of being a manager is about managing people in traditional situations. And given that we don't expect that most people are going to be remote, the opportunities to develop and learn those sorts of skills and things just, they're not there.
Yeah. So is there something so I suppose it's what, as organizations, as individuals, what do you see? And this is a hard one. Here's what's the silver bullet. What can we do to limit either our team? Well, so as a manager, let's take it that way. How can we limit the fact that we unconsciously let someone who is not with us and visible all the time, that we understand and recognize their contribution and are able to make a reasonable judgment of it and coach them and etc. And then from the flip side of us as an individual, what can we do to make sure that our managers can see that?
Yeah, well, I think it begins with the fact that we're not good at that now in the office, right? Our performance management is lousy right now, right? Even for people who are in the office. But here's what we could do. The question is getting people to do it. During the pandemic, it was some of the funnier survey results were those indicating that people liked their supervisors better when they were working remotely. And you might think, oh, okay, I never see her. I like her better. Maybe that's the answer. But a lot of companies were doing one thing that was different. They were making the supervisors schedule Zoom meetings with all their direct reports and talk about work. Sometimes every week. I was talking to one of my MBA students who told me that for their summer interns, who were virtual interns, they were having that meeting every day, 15 minutes at the end of every day with the interns, just talking about how things went. They're not talking about football. They're not talking about the weather. They're not gossiping about their families the way we do in the office. They're having a focused conversation about how are things going, right? And, we could do that. And that would be the thing to do, right? To manage remote workers better, is to keep doing that. So, okay, what are we trying to work on this week? Where are you on these projects? Let's keep track of them. Let's set some expectations about what you think could be done. And let's see if we can, just follow that. We don't do that typically for office workers right now. And the problem is, can we do it for remote workers? Yeah, if somebody's willing to make them do it, they should do it for both, right? The other problem we've got, though, is that remote work requires, or most of it, requires supervisors to do a lot more for you. They have to be your eyes and ears in the organization. What's going on? They have to run interference for your projects and let you know, are the priorities changing here? Are people thinking about this differently? Is there something going on in the organization, a piece of information that you need? And so it puts a big burden on supervisors. And frankly, we haven't given supervisors time or resources, right? So we could get better at managing remote workers. I don't know that it's going to be better, that it will equalize the difference for those remote workers, but it's going to take a lot of time from management. And frankly, one thing that, in the UK, and certainly maybe more so in the US, we just have not done, is we just have not devoted much time or energy to management. So are we going to do it? Well, we could, but somebody's got to think that it's worthwhile. And so far, we really haven't thought it's worthwhile.
Yeah, because that usual thing of management is always that thing of an individual contributor let them be a manager.
Right,
and
which we know doesn't work.
yeah, so without the training, they don't work with, and characters, sometimes they're the wrong people.
Yeah.
I think
And we make you a manager, but then we also want you to be an individual contributor, and we don't give you the time to manage. And we give you too many direct reports, and you can't have these, even if you have these conversations once a week, most of your week is going to go to having these conversations, or we don't count that in as part of what you're supposed to be doing. So, we have to take it seriously, and we don't want to. So, there you go.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? So it's just thinking about what do you see? I'm just looking here at your book, at your sort of titles on there of what would you say is the future looking at, and looking on? It's difficult.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
I can tell you where I think things are going. I think, we've had an enormous amount of attention around the fact that many employees really would like to keep working remotely.
Yeah.
It's not all employees, interestingly, and by some measures in the US, some surveys suggest about a third want to go back to the office, more or less the way it was before, and very small percentage, less than 20%, are really thinking about wanting to be permanently remote someplace. So most everybody wants to be something in between.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't see on the employer side what's in it for them. So in Silicon Valley, my guess as to what went on in Silicon Valley is they're fiercely competitive with each other, those employers, because they're hiring the same individual contractors, contributors rather, right? And so when the sense was that the other companies were getting ahead of them, so Twitter was kind of the leader in this thing, but it turned out Twitter was the leader because they were already moving toward having more remote work when the pandemic started.
Yeah.
But then it looked like they're way ahead and announcing you could work anywhere. Woo! Now they can hire people. Everybody else is chasing them, But the extent to which there's a trend, it's walking that back. So there was an interesting survey done by Slack this last couple of months ago, where they surveyed executives and hourly workers, right? And what they found is the executives overwhelmingly thought it was important to have people come back in the office. The regular employees said, overwhelmingly, we would like some hybrid or something different. But the interesting thing was that only about a third of the executives said that they were consulting their employees in making these decisions. So you know where this is going, right? They're thinking about it. They want people back in the office. They're not bothering to ask their employees because they probably don't care what the employees think. And I think we are drifting in that direction now. As the pandemic dragged on and the restrictions sort of drag on, what most employers, at least in the US, have been doing, about a third of office workers are already back in the office now. So what they've been doing is they've been gradually bringing people back in, keeping some social distance. But when they're bringing them back in, they're bringing them back to the old environment. Yeah. And so by default, I think that's where we're headed. And the reason is, at least in the US anyways, may not be true in the EU. I guess you folks are in between the two, but workers don't have
heaven knows with us these days.
Right. But, the employers are going to do what they want to do. And, there doesn't seem to be enough competition that's pushing employers to have to be hybrid. Yeah. There are some places where there is, in some of the IT jobs, in the field of law, surprisingly, because there the labor market is quite organized for new hires. The leading law firms are all going to the same schools. They're all competing with each other. Everybody's talking to each other. And the students are all asking about hybrid. And so they're rolling out hybrid plans for new lawyers starting out. In tech, they sort of are. In banking and finance, they're not. We're going to get a little bit of a mishmash, but the trend is back to the office, I would say. I don't think that's a great thing, but I think that's the trend.
Yeah, I think the point you made there about the fact that people are dropping back into the same office environment is something that I've talked to people about, and I've said it's going to change. certain, I'm sure, I do think in the IT industry it'll be a lot different. I think that whole thing of having getting rid of hot desks where you're going to sit and, as I say, talk to other people, it needs to be binned. There will be some, but actually it's the collaborative spaces, and I don't mean meeting rooms, I mean collaborative spaces. You will go, you'll meet, you'll work, you'll disappear to somewhere else, you're going to, and having that environment where you've got to look at it and go, and it's going to be bloody hard to work it out, because you've got to think, well, how much collaboration space compared to desk space compared to formal meeting space that we're going to need. But and that's where, and I've seen it some places where the environments that you can, and I'm sure this start doing, is where you can take your environment and move it around and change it. Static desks, static walls, static whiteboard, moving that stuff around is going to be critical, I think, if you're going to do a decent hybrid. And then that whole thing of the hybrid collaboration of having those other team members included. And I you even get to the point, like you say, you got the Zoom, but do you have those little tablets with people's heads on? Does that make people react differently to the one screen on the wall that everyone's ignoring because you're stood at the whiteboard here? Does it change? And I'm there, I'm able to move around and look what's going on. I don't know. The technology's there. It's the how we use it, how we adopt it, how it becomes normal, isn't it? And then you kind of drop onto things like the virtual reality kind of scenarios and AR, as well as are we in 10 years, and this goes to your point at the beginning, are we all going to be wearing Google Glass type things, or Amazon Glass, or whoever glasses that represent a avatar of whoever isn't around in the room as if they're sat there? Because I know as one of my interviewees, Eddie Obeng, he has a virtual environment that they have called Cube, where the idea is you have virtual meetings and you've got your own avatar and you're going around, and it's as if you're in a real world. It's not AR, but it's but it kind of, you look at the things like, is it Roblox? I can't remember where I was reading that, around using that for meetings, or Minecraft and private rooms with that. And you start thinking about, does that, especially bringing like say the younger generation who see that as something that they're used to and normal to use, they might have an Oculus set or a headset of something, or other ones are available, but if someone wants to send me one free because I mentioned it on this, great. But you know what I mean? I don't see Ready Player One quite going to that level of it, but is that something that's going to drive some of that tech now to be able to really ramp up that? Because I can see where that would, if people are working from home and you want better collaboration, that's a way of doing it. And it does open up your boundaries as well to even more remoteness as well.
Yeah, what it still doesn't do is this sort of spontaneous thing. So I heard a quote from, I forgot his name, the head of, I guess, the managing partner of PwC in the UK, who was talking about, what he missed from being in the office. And one of the things was, nobody ever caught him nobody could catch him in the hall and pass on a little tidbit of information or ask him something, that might help them learn about something, right? You can't do that when you're working remotely. If there's something you want to pass on to the managing partner, you got to schedule a Zoom call. And you know what? They're not going to let you schedule a Zoom call.
To be honest, though, I kind of challenge that, because
okay, well, good.
I challenge that from a point of view of, depending on what to the level. For me, the people in my organization, there's a certain level who I would be quite happy to ping an IM to, an instant message to, and say, and ask a question. I would, and maybe that's just where I am from that point.
Yeah, and I guess it depends how many people you've got. So we had a CEO of a company here in Philadelphia say that she tried that by giving people her cell number and telling them they could text her, right? And she said, the problem was she was just so overwhelmed she couldn't even read the text anymore, right? So, trying to figure out how to manage that process is something we're not so good at yet. But having the spontaneous meetings, having the spontaneous feedback, is not something that everybody's going to be open to if they're working from home. The big
true.
thing that people seem to like about working from home is having control of their time.
Yeah.
And having control of their time means to be able to take a break, walk the dog for a while, come back in, sit back down. It doesn't mean being on the screen the whole time, or it means not doing that, really. And so if you don't have that availability, then, we got another challenge, right? So I don't see that there are easy solutions to this. Zoom and video help, but it didn't fundamentally change this difference about being in the office versus not in the office. So maybe it will come along, maybe, but I don't think we're
Introduced its
quite
own
there.
problems as well, didn't it?
Yeah,
That-
sure.
Because I talk about it as, I described it as what I call performance fatigue, because you and I will both be doing it now. We're both sat in front of our cameras, and we can see ourselves on there. And if you're in a room full of 40 people and you're sat in the back and someone's talking to someone else about something else, or even 10 people, you're invisible when they're talking about something specific. So you're furtively checking your email on your phone, or quick check on your tech or whatever. And that's kind of what happens. That's why that happens, because you're not part of that. Cool. But when you're on video, you can see yourself on that gallery of 9 people. Everyone can see you on that gallery. If you're sitting there going, people see you doing that, and you can see it. Now, people might still be ignoring you, but you still have that, it's like presenting, isn't it? It's like if you're running a workshop or a set of lectures through a whole day and it's only you, it's exhausting because you're in performance mode.
It's funny, I had to go to a dermatologist to have something removed this week, but I was talking to her about how's business. And she said, because it's way up, because everybody's on Zoom and they can see themselves and they're seeing things about themselves they don't like. And so now they're coming in to see if they can have, their skin fixed up and things. So I think that's right. It's worse when you can see yourself that way.
Yeah. And it just improved, and that tiredness of that. And I know that I found it exhausting because originally I was a video on first person. Let's make sure we keep these relationships. But for good reasons. And then there was people who wouldn't do it, and I didn't quite understand it. And then I found I was shattered at the end of the day, and I'm thinking, and it was kind of like, again, it's use the right tool at the right time, isn't it? It's if you're having a one-to-one conversation with one of your team members, building relationships, do it. If it's just a quick update on something, don't need it really. And be willing to turn it on or off whenever needed. And it's that whole how technology might help us. I'm really quite interested in on how it could help us. And then the other thing is obviously you say what's in it for the corporates. Is there a thing where they've got a lot of money invested in some incredibly expensive property around the world, and if they can get the same or close enough results to what they're getting now without paying the rent or and as you say, they haven't seen a mass exodus from them yet because they don't know what's going to happen. Is that something potentially that's on the horizon in some fields? Because they go, right, we've gone.
Yeah, well, that's what they're trying. I mean, that's what drove it initially. So in March of 2020, a poll of CFOs found that 30+% said that they were already planning to shrink their real estate footprint. And that's the interest. But it's only that way if you're going to be permanently remote. If you're going to be hybrid, it doesn't save office space.
But you shrink it. You could shrink that office space, don't you?
Well, we tried this. I mean, the hot desking and hoteling, as we called it, it more or less collapsed. So in the mid 2000s, there were articles in the business press saying whatever happened to it, because most employers pulled back from it because people hated it. They really liked having their own desk, and they wanted to be able to, when they come in, not to get a random desk, but to sit with their colleagues and friends. And
Yeah.
so most everybody pulled back from it. So,
Yeah,
there
I
are
can see
people
that.
who think, oh, this time we'll figure it out. But you want to ask yourself, if it didn't work before, what are you going to do differently? Right. So,
Yeah, I can kind of I've been into the office 3 times since COVID now. Well, 4 times. Once to pick up a new monitor, and the other 3 times I had 2 workshop sessions, and one's to meet some of my new team that I've just joined up with. And you know what? I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that. Sat at the desk, and it was very few of us there, but that little bit of banter, that little bit of chatting about stuff was really, I found it really positive. Even though as I said earlier, I don't like that 40-minute drive there and back. It was kind of, it's still, I wouldn't want to do that 40-minute drive, but then I kind of think, well, I kind of would like that. So I wonder whether, are we going to get the sort of local hub scenarios of the I know certainly in the local town by me, they're about to convert one place into I think it's £12 a day you can rent a desk for, or if you pay monthly, you can and kind of have and you can, that gives you, or you can have a pay so much and have a desk twice a week, and you're going to get similar people working there. Is it about that human connection with people? Not necessarily, like that doesn't give you the work benefit, and obviously there's the confidentiality kind of things and things like that around it, but it gives you that human element that we kind of being part of a community, that being in an office is a massive part of it, is that you are part of a community, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, we ran this experiment too, right, with WeWork and all those places. I don't know to what extent the conclusion was that really functioned to create a community. I just don't know. I mean, if you don't have the same people there all the time, it doesn't have that benefit. So I don't know. It's a good question. Nigel, you can probably tell that it's getting dark here as I'm suddenly sitting in the dark.
Yeah, I can see.
My wife has reminded me that we have to go to the symphony tonight. So
wow.
Soon we should probably wrap up if that's
fine.
Okay with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We're knocking on an hour now, so that's brilliant. So if we cut into, I'll cut that bit out, and then if we cut in now. So obviously this is going to be a challenge for all of us. Your book talks about some of the choices that with all of us, and as I say, I say to everyone who comes on this, I don't read their whole books so that I can be the person who doesn't know anything when I'm talking to you. It's not because I'm lazy, honest. If people were thinking about how are we going to move forward, what would you say were the couple of key points that they get out of your book?
Well, the first is that it doesn't work so well for people who want to be permanently remote. The second, and we know that because we've studied it for about 20 years. The second is that we have to figure out what works for the employer on this. And, simply because many employees like it doesn't necessarily make it persuasive for employees. So I think what I try to do, I'm not particularly preachy. I'm just trying to lay out, here are the challenges if you go down this path. Here are the things we have to think about, and here are the pitfalls, right? So I think that's basically it. It's the roadmap of here are the things you have to worry about, right? And here are different ways you could try to deal with them, but it's not a book encouraging you to go one way or the other. So.
Good. Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, Peter, thank you for coming on the show. If people wanted to find out more about you, where's the best place for them to find you, etc.?
Fortunately, there's not very many Cappellis in the academic world. So if you just look for Peter Cappelli, two P's and 2 L's, I have a website at the Wharton School. I got other stuff floating around other places, but I'm pretty easy to find.
Brilliant.
Because of that.
Superb. Well, as I say, thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to Peter for that chat. Fascinating, interesting topics that we covered there. I hope you found the same. That's it really for me to say. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, but just remember the dinner table. Jump along, let's have a chat, tell me about what you thought about the conversation with Peter. So it's at tinyurl.com/the dinner table, or search for it on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you have anything you want to shout out to me, give me a shout at nigel@nigelcreaser.com. And look after yourself. Cheers now. Bye. If you enjoyed the show, it would be brilliant if you would like to support it. Number of ways you can do that. Number one is sharing it with your friends and colleagues. The more people who hear about it, the more people get the experience from my fantastic guests. If you want to go a bit more than that, you could jump onto wherever you listen to this and give me a review. 5 stars would be lovely. And if you want to look at throwing some cash towards me, there are a number of ways you can do that. You can pop along to the Patreon/SundayLunchPM there, or you could grab one of the books that I've published over the years and obviously get a little bit of cash from those. On the website, under the shop, under the shop, I've got links to all of my previous guests' books. Andy and Joel's is on there. And if you jump along to there, you can buy a copy of their books, and I get a little kickback from that too. And obviously, with our new headline sponsor of Templo, popping along, signing up, and if you end up using it, I will get a kickback there as well. So finally, obviously, as I say every time, the most important thing though is come back next time. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
Remember, if you want better meetings and better task follow-up, Templo's where to get it. Don't forget your 1-month trial, tinyurl.com/NigelCreaser Templo. That's NIGELCREASER Templo. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.